What if a plan was made in secret and your life depended on someone overhearing it? What if danger wasn't coming from the outside anymore, but was being carefully organized, step by step, in the shadows? And what role would you play if you were the only one who knew the truth? The night after the chaos in the council chamber was quiet. Too quiet. Paul had just been pulled away from another explosive situation. Accusations, arguments, division, it had all reached a breaking point. But in the silence that followed, something more dangerous began to form. Not a crowd, not a public reaction, but a plan. A group of men came together with one purpose. They made a vow, a serious one. They bound themselves with an oath, declaring they would not eat or drink until they had killed Paul. Think about that level of intensity. This wasn't anger in the moment. This was commitment. Cold, focused, determined. More than 40 men joined in this plan. 40 individuals willing to sacrifice their own comfort, even their own lives, just to ensure one outcome. Paul must die. But they didn't stop at intention. They built a strategy. They approached the chief priests and the elders, the same leaders who had already been part of the earlier conflict, and together they formed a coordinated plan. They would request that Paul brought before the council again, pretending they wanted to examine his case more closely, to understand it better, to look deeper into the details. But it was all a setup, because along the way, before Paul ever reached them, these men would be waiting, hidden, prepared, ready to strike. An ambush, planned in secret, backed by influence, driven by hatred. It seemed airtight, no noise, no warning, no chance to escape. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because sometimes, in the middle of the darkest plans, there is a quiet interruption. Something small, something unnoticed, something that changes everything. Paul had a nephew, a young man. We don't know much about him. No long history, no big introduction. Just one detail that matters. He heard about the plot. We don't know how. Maybe he was in the right place at the right time. Maybe he overheard a conversation not meant for him. Maybe someone slipped. But somehow, he found out. And in that moment, he had a choice. He could stay silent. He could think, this isn't my problem. He could assume someone else would handle it. Or he could act. And he did. He went straight to the barracks, to Paul. Imagine that moment. Walking into a place guarded by soldiers, carrying information that could change everything, seeing his uncle, not free, not safe, but held under watch, and telling him there's a plan. They're waiting, they're ready to kill you. This wasn't rumor, this was real, and Paul listened. He didn't dismiss it, he didn't delay, he took it seriously, and immediately he acted. He called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander, he has something important to tell him." No hesitation. No second guessing, because Paul understood something crucial. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important message. The centurion took the young man to the commander, and now the situation shifted again, from secret to revealed. The commander took him aside, privately, not in front of others, not in a crowd, but one-on-one, and asked, "What do you have to tell me?" And the young man explained everything, the plan, the oath, the number of men, the ambush, the deception. Every detail, clear, direct, urgent. He didn't exaggerate, he didn't hold back, he simply told the truth. And then he gave a warning. Don't be persuaded by them. Because the request would sound reasonable. It would look official. It would seem legitimate. But behind it was danger. The commander listened carefully. Because now, this wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't a crowd reacting emotionally. This was a planned attack, organized, intentional, and serious. He understood the weight of what he was hearing. And then he did something important. He told the young man, "Don't tell anyone that you have reported this to me." Secrecy remained, but now it was on the side of protection. Because the plan had been exposed, an action would follow. This moment revealed something powerful. Because the story could have gone very differently. If the nephew had stayed silent, if he had ignored what he heard, if he had hesitated even for a moment, the outcome might have changed completely. But he didn't. He stepped in, quietly, decisively, and his action became the turning point. Not a leader, not a soldier, not someone with authority, just someone who paid attention and chose to act. This reminds us of something we often overlook. Impact is not always about position, it's about response. You don't have to be the most powerful person in the room to make a difference. Sometimes you just have to be the one who speaks up, the one who listens, the one who moves when it matters. Paul didn't know the plan, he couldn't see what was coming, but someone else did. And that connection changed everything. This is how protection often works. Not always through big visible moments, but through quiet awareness, through unexpected people, through small actions that carry huge consequences. It also shows us something about timing, because the plan was already in motion. The men had already committed, the leaders had already agreed, everything was set, but it wasn't too late, because truth arrived at the right moment, and timing can change everything. There's also something deeper happening here, something beyond the immediate situation. Because earlier, Paul had received a message, "Take courage, you will testify in Rome." That promise still stood, even when danger increased, even when plans formed against him, even when things looked uncertain. The direction hadn't changed, and this moment becomes part of that path. Because sometimes the promise doesn't remove the danger, it carries you through it. The plot didn't disappear, it was real, but it didn't succeed. Because there was awareness, because there was action, because someone chose to speak. And maybe that's where this story connects with us the most. Because we all face moments where something isn't right, moments where we see something, hear something, sense something, and we have a choice. Ignore it, or respond to it. Stay silent, or speak up. Assume it doesn't matter, or recognize that it might matter more than we think. The nephew didn't know the full impact of his decision. He didn't know how the story would unfold. He just knew one thing: something needed to be said, and that was enough. This also challenges the idea that only big actions matter, because this was a small moment, one conversation, one decision, one step, but it changed the direction of everything. So often we wait for big opportunities, big moments, big roles, but sometimes the most important thing we can do is respond in the moment we're given. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just faithfully. And that's what happened here. A hidden plan, met by a quiet voice, a dangerous intention, interrupted by simple truth, and a life preserved because someone chose to act. As the story continues, we'll see how the commander responds, how protection is put into place, how the journey moves forward. But this moment, this quiet turning point, is where everything shifts, because it reminds us you never know how important your role is until you choose to step into it. You never know how much impact you can have until you decide to act, and you never know what could change because you chose not to stay silent. So as you reflect on this, ask yourself, what have I been noticing but ignoring? What have I been hearing but not acting on? And what would happen if I chose to respond? Because your moment might look big, it might not feel dramatic, but it could matter more than you think, just like it did here. Thank you for watching this video. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like, follow the channel, and share this video with someone who needs this reminder today.